Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, presented by Accuracy in Academia. I am Don Irvine, your host, and my co-host is Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right, so I was thinking like if I put that on there, I'm gonna say, well, look at
Look at
that.
there. The
um,
celebration is
yeah,
on.
we just we'll be doing it throughout the show because I can't turn that sucker off. I was gonna say it's like, how am I supposed to spell it? Magats or what?
Yeah, that's what it is. And they make the
Okay.
T low to show that it's another word.
Okay. So, all right. I may try to include that though, because I was thinking about it. Like, what, where'd this thing come from? All right. Now we even got a thumbs up. So maybe that'll encourage others. Who knows? All right. So, weather, just the weekly weather report. We're just about a month away from the official start of spring. Um, Winter hasn't been anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Me and Marty were talking about this yesterday. This is the part of the year where, this has been going on a long time now, and enough, right? It's like walking outside another cold day. It's like enough. Now it's not, it could be worse, right? It could be 12 instead of 42, and there could be 5 inches of snow on the ground and all this, that, and the other. But it's still, you got to dress for it. You got to take it into account in everything you do. You really can't do anything outside because it's really unpleasant, right? And so there's the thumbs up says, yeah, unpleasant. And it's been going on now since Thanksgiving, basically, right? Or early. So we're to the point where, people are ready to move on, get back to spring, get back to where you can go outside, have some choices.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. So the thing about social media because I've posted a lot of pictures over the years, on social media. So there's it randomly reminds you of things that happened on this day, whatever, how many ever years ago. And so one earlier today popped up from 9 years ago, and it was snowing on this day 9 years ago. And I'm thinking like I'm grateful it's not snowing, but every time I'm outside and we've got these 40, 50-degree temperatures, I'm like, I feel that spring is like here almost, or
yeah,
when you actually see
it's teasing us.
When I came to the house the other day, when I was coming to the front door, there were flies or a few flies on my front door. It's like,
good sign.
That's a sign. Of course, it gets frigid again, probably will kill them off and everything like that. So I'm grateful we've had very little snow. I was expecting a lot more, but we're still in February and we have had snow in March, so we're not out of the woods yet. This could by the end of March we could still have snow. So
right, the weather, the long range weather people are saying that we still could have another winter weather event. So they've called for one all along to be either in late February or early March. So we do have one to go.
Which means I'm going to have to go. I'll have to go back to the web and say, how do I start my snowblower again? It's you got to press a couple of buttons simultaneously. But it was fine when I was using it, and then I haven't used it, and I'm like thinking the other day, I was like, what was that? What was the order I was supposed to do this in again?
Yeah,
because I have to go to you have to go to the internet for stuff like this because nothing you buy today comes with an owner's manual, a printed manual.
You remember, or if they do, it's perfunctory. It doesn't,
it'll be like a little thing about some warnings and maybe a few diagrams about how to put something together. But basically, they send everything. They send you to the internet, for things like that. So none of the owner's manuals that were standard, where you could flip through and try to figure things out, they're basically gone. For the most part, on just about everything, which, admittedly, a lot of owner's manuals just probably wound up in the trash or wound up in a drawer, never to be looked at again for a lot of things. So like certain appliances, but it's other things that, okay, well, this isn't quite intuitive. What's supposed to do this thing, So it would, it'd be nice if we got something a little, if I'd had like a little one pager about this is how you start your snow blower, right?
Right.
Because I was like, there's nothing here. I got to go to the internet and figure this out. I hate this, that I don't like. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, well, it's good. I mean, I'm waiting for that spring, and we'll see what it is, and we definitely feel that the whole baseball in the air kind of mentality
Oh yeah.
too.
They're down
Right?
there warming them up in Florida.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so there's some days. We're a couple days away from the day that Russia invaded Ukraine, the 2 year anniversary.
2 year anniversary. That's right.
Yeah, and there's we've talked about this. There's really no real sign that this is ending anytime soon. Lots of opinions on both sides. I think there was a story the other day that I guess Russia has taken over a town in Ukraine. Others, people saying that there's no way in hell that Putin is going to lose this. So he's digging deep. I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that said, which I had not realized until I saw it, that Russia had been recruiting soldiers, people from Cuba and Central Africa and places like that to come and fight, which also tells me it's like you're kind of running low on people. You've been emptying out your prisons, you've been finding prisoners to go, but now you're starting to go to other countries and see if you can't dangle some money in front of them and say, come on over, we don't care if you don't know how to fight, we need some bodies up there as cannon fodder.
Right.
How long is it?
People that their economic prospects are bad enough to where that looks like a good deal. So, it is
where are we going?
As it says though on Ukraine, the lines have not moved in about 16 months. Some incremental gains by the Russians, but it's pretty much at a standstill with Russia controlling about a third of the country, and it has its land bridge to Crimea. So it's a land bridge, and they have to build highways or whatever. But there's a way to get from the port to the motherland now, which is what all the Russians were after. So they're not going to give up what they have without a massive fight, and even the assistance that's being asked for from us and others would not be sufficient to do that, right? So, we've talked about this, the duration of this war. And as long as we were funding an effort that said, we can win this, we can turn back Russia, we can destroy their military and so forth, or at least destroy this campaign, right? At least get them out of Ukraine, have Ukraine be a sovereign country on its own. Okay, yes, that's worth doing, right? It's a long uphill battle. It won't be easy, but it was worth doing. So now you're to a point where you're not going to win. So you got to decide, is there a way to make a peace that everyone could live with? Would Russia agree to stop there, right, in Ukraine? Like they have their bridge. Do they really need Kiev? If if Putin is to be believed what he said in the Tucker Carlson interview, maybe not, right? He looks at this as the Rus, and he has his historical perspective on it, right? He gave Tucker that 30-minute answer of Russian history and history of the adjoining area and so forth, and it's sort of the locus of that, the purpose of that whole explanation was why he's just setting things right. He's just making things like they've always been and ought to be, right? He's not taking over anything. This is something that was theirs to start with. It's been wrongfully taken away from them. Okay, so you can say what you want about that. You may not agree with it, right? I don't agree with it, but that's the way they think, and that's the way they're going to act. And so you either need to decide, are you going to stand up to that? Are you going to say it, harden it to where, Ukraine only loses this part of the country? Are you prepared to fight that fight if Russia gets in there and gets dissatisfied and decides to go for the whole thing? What will we do? Who will be on our side? Who will actually contribute money, men, and material to defending this? But we need to have that discussion. And the idea that, you just send them $60 billion, which they tell, we're not really sending it. We're spending it on arms and our arm manufacturers. that's, you know, I'm all for arms manufacturers, right? We have to have them in our country, and they need to be successful businesses. But we're not going to give people money for something like this just to make sure the arms manufacturers have enough orders, right? That's not how U.S. policy should work ever. So, you know, I don't know what's coming up on this, but I do think that like it's time to start thinking about what are the next steps. You know, the weakness, the mistake the U.S. made was made at the outset of the Biden administration, and it can't be undone, and it won't be undone. And you know, they're not smart enough to see what they did anyway, so it won't matter. So, you know, we need to decide, like, with the facts on the ground, how much money do we want to throw at this, and for what? What do we want in return for the money we're spending? Just keeping the arms manufacturers healthy, you know, to me, is not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, we had, I mean, you know, at the start, we had, you know, there'd been you know, a number of Republicans that were objecting to the funding of this effort, right? And you know, and I think both of us were like, no, they're wrong, and actually Biden is right in doing what he's doing, and things like this. I think that, you know, what's happening. I mean, don't you, that the sentiment is, because it's dragged on so long, that, you know, we're seeing the sentiment change even among others that were in favor of doing what we were doing, because there's no progress going on. I mean, what's the strategy? What is the end game? What do we, you know, we're not going anywhere, and there's all this money being thrown into this effort, but for what? You know, to maintain the status quo as it is today. So, you know, I can
no one's
now
going to help Biden at this point. There's no coalition he leads, right? They pretend there is, but there's not. And you know, world leaders, you know, they can tell that he's an extremely weak political position, and he's losing the battle for re-election. And they know that. They're not going to make a deal with somebody that they know won't be here next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, but he's got Putin endorsement, right?
Right, that's right. So let's talk about that for a second. So Putin endorses Biden, kills Navalny. You know, then, you know, they have this spy guy who's, you know, our FBI have been talking to him every single day, is what they testified, every single day for the last 10 years. This guy's been giving them confidential human information for more than 20 years. He's been allowed to do illegal things so he could gain information for 20 years. He has, you know, been a trusted informant. They've never questioned a thing he, you know, found false, a thing he said. But now he's saying that the Bidens took payments to get rid of Victor Shokin. Oh, he's lying. He's indicted for lying, you know. And so they indict him for lying, and then they interview him, and he's, oh, it all came from the Kremlin. I'm just doing what the Kremlin told me to do. It's like, you think we're a little bit on the nose there, right? So, you know, I don't know. It appears to me that, like, the Bidens realize that they're starting to get in trouble, and they're trying to come up with ways to distract it. Of course, the hyenas on the other side are like, oh, the whole thing was a lie. The whole thing is based on the Hunter Biden laptop, right? And so it's not a lie. There's the laptop. The laptop hasn't changed. Nothing has happened to impugn the accuracy of the laptop. In fact, the accuracy of the laptop has been strengthened. So, you know, none of this is going away. And there's still, you know, $20 million, $30 million of verified payments from the Chinese to Biden and his family. Like, what are the Chinese paying Biden $30 million to, right? Any reasonable answer, but we haven't gotten one yet.
Yeah, this whole thing is just getting, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it anymore, but, you know, I just look at what's happening here. You know, you're talking about trying to find kind of, you know, whatever the peace, you know, is the solution here in Ukraine and Russia. You know, is it the status quo, I guess, in terms of wherever they are now is what, you know, is where it should be, and move on from there. The thing is that you kind of wonder what the NATO countries, you know, and any, you know, countries that are bordering, you know, Russia, they're like, wait a minute, you know, Ukraine is now going to, you know, they're going to give up more territory to the Russians. You know, does that not, you know, put more fear into them as to what to do? You know, will they have more resolve to say, you know, to go back to, you know, go back to Ukraine and say, no, you've got to keep fighting on, because you can't, we can't have this. Any part of your country that falls into Russian hands on a permanent basis is a bad thing for us. So there's so many different things going on here. I mean, the NATO countries at least look like have been trying to step up things in terms of aid. The U.S. has not been as strong on that. Like we just discussed, we're having our internal battles about how much money, and stuff, and we don't have as much materiel to send them right now anyway, so that they're trying to fill a void there. But it is this grinding kind of thing. If Putin's basically going around the world looking for mercenary soldiers in essence to drop in there, he can just keep paying this money and just keep fighting this thing on and on and on. It's
right.
And just keep doing it.
And our mistakes in energy policy have, driven Europe back into his arms for energy needs, and a lot of the rest of the world. So his coffers are full again. Trump had him broke. Yeah. Biden came in and changed energy policy and made Putin rich again. But Trump's the Putin tool.
Yeah, but after 2 years, it's kind of like, NATO's been trying to avoid any kind of ground war of using their own troops in there and all that stuff. But to me, I just kind of wonder if NATO committed troops and some things like this, I think that the dynamic would change. I understand the political ramifications of all this, but 2 years, Ukraine has barely been able to hold it together. They've done remarkably well considering what they were facing, but without really more troops on the ground and more effort, and more experienced troops, this is not going to end well for Ukraine in the long run. And if those NATO countries want to protect their own borders and their interests, then they better rethink this. And I'm not trying to push these guys getting in there necessarily, but we're already at war. I mean, this is a war that these countries are already involved in by sending all this money and material into. At this point, maybe they ought to just go ahead and provide some troops and see if they can't get the pushback and kind of push Putin back and just end this thing, because otherwise this is going to go on for a while, and until Ukraine finally says, okay, we want to go to the table and just end this.
The risk of that, I guess, is also, if the West escalates, Russia will escalate. You could get into some
right. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying.
But the point you make is really good. In a very real sense, this is a lot more Europe's problem than it is ours, right?
Right.
And so that's who they need to be dealing with it, at least to the extent we are. Right. This is not America's going to fix this for you. You need to participate in fixing this yourself.
Yeah, that's really right. That's right. This is like this is a war in a part of the world that we have an interest, but it's the real interest are those countries that are there, that are bordering Russia. This is we can provide. We'll provide you some money and some material, but you really need to fix this.
Yeah, that's right. And you need to show that because it also shows that you will fix things like this. Because right now, Putin rightfully assumed that Europe wouldn't lift a finger to help Ukraine, and he was right. I mean, they didn't not lift a finger, but they didn't do much. They left it to America to do.
Right, and because Ukraine is not yet a NATO ally country, that is part of the reasoning. It's like, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go in there into a non-NATO helping them do this. So they could fix that as well, but they have they've had 2 years to deal with that. They know that they've had 2 years to fix that. They could do that. So there's a lot of pussyfooting going on by NATO.
That's right.
That's why I don't necessarily blame Trump and his statements on NATO. Right? It's like, and get them to pay their fair share.
Right. That's what, and of course the Democrats have taken it out of context. They're trying to make it like you would destroy NATO and all this. NATO was stronger when Trump left office than it had ever been in its history. And it was because of what Trump did. He went and embarrassed those countries into, spending on defense what they promised to spend. So, if you spend all that money, here's where you use it. Here's why we have militaries. This is the very kind of behavior you want to deter. So it's not just spend the money. It's not just hire more corporals, right? It's actually be ready to fight when there are threats. And so if you had done this like what Trump wanted, you would be ready to do this. You'd be ready to deal with it.
So with Navalny, I mean, he was only what, 47, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why did he come back? Putin has shown that he has no compunction whatsoever about eliminating his enemies, right? And then he goes to prison. It's like kind of like, well, how long is he going to last in the prison system? Under Putin, apparently, just as we kind of figured, not really all that long, in the grander scheme of things. What happens to the opposition movement, in Russia? I mean, is it dead now without Navalny? Is there somebody else that's going to come? Is this just Putin? He just rules this till the day he dies. This is all his.
Well, yes, there's some other opposition leader in Russia. I'm sure there's probably a power struggle going on right now to determine who will be the voice of opposition in Russia. It's like one of those things, like first prize is 2 tickets to see the Nats. Second prize is 4 tickets to see the Nats. Be careful what you win here, because it's, not your life expectancy kind of nosedives. But he doesn't, it's the dissident movement in Russia is not going to change the government, right? They've been at it 75, 80 years now. It's not going to happen. So, whoever it is, they need to be calling this out, bringing it to the world's attention. And, the worst excesses need to be, dealt with by the world. They may deal with this Navalny, but that's it. They're not going to unseat the ruler, and we really probably shouldn't be picking who rules Russia. That's a choice for Russians.
Right. Obviously so. I mean, but you do have to kind of watch out what you wish for, because Prigozhin, who died, right? I mean, he and Putin, they were doing famously well until Prigozhin, kind of turned against him, and then what happened? He's like, he's like you're either with me or you're against me. If you're against me, you're not going to be here long.
Right. That's right.
So he sent. I think he sent some clear messages about what it's like to say or do anything to him that opposes anything that he's doing at this point, and all that. And and what about Tucker? I mean, is Tucker? Is he become? I mean, I've seen reports. People have been calling him, a useful idiot. Do you think that's anywhere close to being true at this point, or what's Tucker after?
Somebody's got to go. If you can get an interview with him, you should get an interview with him, right? I think that the media companies kind of acknowledge that, as Trump. One of his claims was that no one's interviewed Putin, no one's even tried to. Oh no, we tried. He just said no. Okay, so you did try. So it's just so what you're bitter about is not the notion that someone would interview Putin, but the notion that someone else would interview Putin. Right, which is a different, journalists are jealous of scoops and stuff all the time. I know, I've been there. I felt this in my heart. So, that's what they're mad about. And then, so, he didn't get a whole lot. If you watch the interview, it's not all that exciting, to be honest. But you did get this. But you do get the notion from Putin that, the reason he's doing this is deep-seated history, national psyche type of thing, and it's not a frivolous thing. He doesn't mean, you can question whether he means harm to much of the rest of the world over it. Poland doesn't seem included in his long dissertation to Carlson on how all this came to be, right? His 30-minute history lesson or whatever. But the Russians think like that. This has to do, we are avenging something that happened in 1042, right? And then it was made right in 1057, and then some other jerk came along in 1108 and messed it up again. And we're get back that guy in 1108, right? We're going back to to 1,500, 1,200 years, and we are fixing this wrong, this historical wrong. We don't think like that, but they do, right? And so that is where they are on this. And so, we can say, well, that's not really why they're doing it. It may not be really why they're doing it, but that is the reason they're giving, and that's the reason that they are, more importantly, acting on. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. I think that the Democrats' argument, and it's completely politically convenient, is, if we don't send the $60 billion, Trump will, Putin will finish off Ukraine and start attacking everybody else in Europe, right? First Poland, then Lithuania, then Finland, then us, right? I don't see the evidence of that. It could happen, but it seems to me like, if he's hiring soldiers, as you say, from all over the world just to finish this war, I don't see him jumping into another war real quickly. I do see him wanting to get this wrapped up before Trump becomes president, because I legitimately think that he is extremely afraid of Trump. And I don't know what will happen, as he tries to negotiate that.
Yeah. Why else would he endorse Biden?
Right. And throw this wrench in about the confidential informant, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden this guy's lying and he got all this information from the Kremlin. Gotcha. That's just perfectly fits with what does Biden need to get out of this scandal? He needs the chief witness to say, I'm lying and I got all my information from the Kremlin, right? It just couldn't be more perfect. So it might be true, but I think it's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think we have, it's interesting that you bring about, what happened in, say, 1042, 1050, all this kind of thing. This happens all over the world, right? These long-seated hatred, animosities, these injustices, they're there for a long time with people.
Yeah, and especially the Russians, though. There's a very big sense that nothing ever really changes there.
So when you were saying that, I said, well, I guess the only comparison to the U.S., if that it's is like slavery, right? It's like we have all these people that are going back, the injustices of slavery. We have to have reparations. We got to fix this and all this kind of stuff. And it's like we don't care if slavery was abolished by Lincoln and all this, but you still owe us money, and you still have to fix things even today for everything.
That's Western thought is evolved in a way that Russian intellectual thought has not really. Okay. And in Western society, the guilt attains to the individual. White people didn't kill somebody. Joe Smith, the guy with the gun, killed somebody. Right. So we don't put white people in jail. We put Joe Smith in jail. He's the one who did it. Right. So the people who are wronged, they're the ones who owed money. If you live 150 years after the people who were wronged, you don't get money because you weren't there when the wrongs were done, right? So that's a whole different concept. That's Marxists in this country trying to visit a Marxist concept on a Western society.
Yeah, every time I look around, I'm like, I just don't see the end in sight. There's always all these other things that are going on, around, and it's just, we have all this diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, which is a little bit more on its heels. To me, as I thought about it, DEI was basically the new popular term for affirmative action, right?
Right.
It's basically clothed, that's just wrapped like that. But affirmative action / DEI, they've struggled now in the last 6 months to a year of getting any more ground or getting any more footing, because it's been exposed for the just the ludicrousness of what's going on there. There are teachings that are going on under these policies, all the hiring policies, school admission policies, and all of these things, and what's the long-term record on affirmative action in education? It hasn't really changed anything. I saw something.
It's not making education better. I think we can conclude that.
Yeah, no, I was looking for something the other day, and there was something caught my eye from the Journal that I hadn't seen yet, and it was kind of, it was on woke curriculum, and woke kindergarten. And apparently in San Francisco, uh, there was an organization that's actually called Woke Kindergarten, and they had a $250,000 contract to basically teach. There's a new theory about teaching should be there's abolitionist teaching is the way to go, and they're trying to teach the staff, the faculty, the teachers, and then to the students about all these things. And it's just about all the racism and all the injustices that have gone on and all this stuff. So this was in a minority school that's 80% Latino, underachieving school, and there were lots of things where people started to say, but the test scores didn't go up; they actually went down during under this contract. One of the teachers who questioned the whether or not this was worth the money because the test scores weren't going anywhere, and that the students really needed more help with math and literacy, got put on administrative leave without being told why. Just some kind of bureaucratic gobbledygook as to why they're on that. It you know, it's just kind of crazy. And this is in San Francisco. I mean, you actually now seeing in the San Francisco area, this they basically have terminated the contract. I think most of the money's been paid out, so I don't think there's going to be necessarily a savings of money. But it just kind of reminds me of critical race theory and stuff like that. People started to look around and say, what's going on here? What are you guys trying to teach our kids? What are you trying to do to the system?
That's right.
You have taken what you've been moving into the elementary education area with all this indoctrination, though they claim it's not indoctrination. And it turns out also the guy who was running this woke kindergarten, one of the other problems, I think the real reason that they revoked the contract was that the guy had gone on Instagram and had basically gone, it was all pro Hamas.
No. Okay.
And so that was a problem. Okay, it's like you can't do this. Like, how do you justify a contract with a guy's company who's pro Hamas in essence, right?
Yeah. You know what? That they didn't coordinate that with the Biden administration. That has been a complete disaster for the Biden administration. The October 7th attacks, right?
Yeah.
Because you have, the 2/3, 70% of the country is behind Israel. And his party, the loudest voices in his party, are not. They're for for terrorism. I mean, it's the Democrats. They're all for terrorism. So they don't think it'll hit them, right? So so he can't. Like he had to veto a UN resolution the other day, calling on Israel to demand a ceasefire. And now he's going to go back with some other resolution that we will vote for, that we will approve, that does fairly close to the same thing, but he doesn't think it will offend Israel as bad or some such nonsense, right? There's no moral clarity. It's like they're totally, whoever's, whatever way the wind's blowing, and he cannot make his party happy. You saw what happened in Michigan this week. The president was up there. He was booed, treated roughly in Michigan because he can't have clarity on this. Rashida Tlaib, people want to sanction her. She was the only person in the House to vote against the resolution to condemn Hamas for the attacks, right? So I mean, that's a civil war within the Democrat Party that they cannot solve, right? There's too many people on each side, and the differences are irreconcilable. So that's just, that could well cost Biden Michigan, right? And in a sea of states he's going to have to try to hold on to. That's not good news.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Jews are traditionally democratic voters, in large numbers,
and donors, which is even a bigger deal.
This situation, in Israel, I think a lot of people, especially if they have family in Israel, I think they take another look at exactly, are the Democrats, so the Biden administration, are they defending Israel, like they used to in theory, right? That now it just seems that we've got a very big conflict, there in the Middle East, and we don't have the clarity from the Biden administration, as you're saying, on this. And so if you're a Jewish Democrat voter, I think you're kind of beginning to wonder whether or not they're going to do and protect your interest in Israel, especially if you have family or businesses in Israel, and a lot of them do,
Yeah.
and they're very concerned. And we can go back to our liberal Jewish donors to higher education, to the colleges and universities. Bill Ackman in particular, who said, like, no, he says, like, this president's got to go. We can't have these university presidents that are allowing anti-Semitism to flourish on our campus,
Right.
And got to do something about it.
Right.
So
There's, where was the, like, even speaking to people about, what you're doing here is really racist, right? And maybe you want to consider the racist implications of what you're doing. No one stepped up to say that, because the group that they were being racist against was not favored, right? That they too were fine with discriminating against the Jews, right? That was a reprehensible chapter in the history of academia. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to recover.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's something that will, right. I think that's something that kind of continues on. I mean, we've seen the resignation of a couple of presidents, but it doesn't mean that's the solution has been reached there, that they've got that. I think there's pressure that still needs to be held, because these pro Hamas students, they're still there. I mean,
Right.
and
That's right.
they're still active and doing things, and not really being told you can't do that. So they're still popping up and doing this, and yeah, it is reprehensible as to what's happening there with higher education, and the Biden administration is just they don't seem to care about this, about what's happening here.
Yeah, the other thing they don't care about is it's about to be a huge problem is the student loans, right? Biden forgave 40 million more in student loan, 50 million more in student loans in the last day or so. Okay, so where does that program go? How do we go into the future? How do we continue to lend people money when there's now an expectation that at some point the president will come along and tell them they don't have to pay it back? Right? I think the government's got to get out of the student loan business now. I think that's going to be the upshot of this, is that government's going to say, we just, since we can't actually demand repayment of these loans, we can't really make these loans, right? I don't want to make them anymore, right? What would happen? And, and the other, side of that is, so what would that do to higher education? Okay. So if all these people who go to school on student loans could not get them from the government, had to go to private lenders to get them. Okay, so that means less credit, and it may be more expensive. Okay, so fewer people would be able to use the credit, the borrow as you go as opposed to pay as you go system for going through college, right? So that would make what happened to college. Either it would empty out or the price would come way down. Also, the basket weaving and gender studies and underwater airbrushing courses would be gone, right? Because if you really have to pay for it, if you really have to write a check, you have to stick to what you actually need to learn to make a living, right? So colleges will be much more focused on what they're supposed to actually do, and much more affordable, because otherwise they won't have any access to the market. It's the market's already caving after the first big round of woke. Like, for instance, you remember University of Missouri, they had the crazy professor who was going around screaming at people and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The next year, the freshman class was 25% of the size of the previous freshman class. So they lost 75% of the size of a class in 1 year. Okay. So like the whole market for who's going to go sleep on a campus for 4 years and go to college in the old traditional way of going to college is falling through the floor now. Okay, what's in is community colleges, learn from home, over the computer, internet teaching, all that kind of stuff. And, sitting on a campus partying for 4 years is, it's not just that's becoming a thing for the rich. It's becoming a thing for only a certain segment of the rich. So, it's how relevant is it to society anymore? It looks like the people who vote in lockstep with academia, their numbers are falling even more dramatically. So,
I mean,
something needs to be done to
right. I
reset.
mean, you mentioned, a while back on this show, I think we talked about like Montgomery County and all the middle management and kind of the bloat there. This is also a problem in academia, right, in higher
Right,
education, where there's just you cannot tell me that really, the cost of the value of education at Harvard is whatever they're charging now, $60,000-$70,000 a year, or whatever. The student loan program is a major part of why these things ratchet up, because universities are like, okay, look, you just get a student loan, we're going to give you a scholarship or whatever, because the prices they want to charge are totally unrealistic. So then they give you a discount, and then you borrow the rest, and then those are things that are federally guaranteed and whatnot, and so that everybody's happy, and they're like, yeah, we can keep. There's no incentive for higher education to actually run efficiently, right?
right.
They
That's
they,
why I'm
they
saying
pile
turn off the loan money. You'll have
yeah
all the incentive you need.
they pile up all kinds of money in their endowment. They build a lot of big fancy buildings that they don't need to build it. Education at its core doesn't need big fancy buildings and all these kinds of things. You mentioned classes. Yeah. Why do we need a class on Taylor Swift, and all these other types of things? No, let's focus on what kids need to learn, what the students really need to learn, what the valuable skills. And that's another reason why, besides the cost, it's just that I think people are looking and say, what am I getting out of going to college, and how does it help me get a job? More employers are saying, no, you don't need a college degree, right?
Right.
You
I
can.
mean,
We will help.
the state of Virginia opened up something like 635 positions that used to require a college degree. And, the governor did it by executive order and said, all right, no longer do these 635 positions require a college degree. The other thing is, it's not, the Taylor Swift, they can have the Taylor Swift class, right? But you got to pay for it yourself, right?
Right.
So if we get down to what things are willing to pay for, I'm not against the Taylor. If that's what you want to pursue academically, and we need to have outlets for people to pursue esoteric stuff, even stuff that like you and me may not find, necessary to run society. You need some poets out there. You need some gender studies people out there. You need, but they need to pay for that themselves, because, that's not outside of academia. There's not a lot of career for those people, right? You really can't sell that skill. Okay. So society is there for the skills that transfer to all of us, but the things that, that are just your interests, you need to pay for. We need to reestablish that doctrine that we're not paying for just any college activity. We're paying for things that society needs.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too. It's just we've just seen how much the tuition has skyrocketed over the years. Maybe colleges, universities, some of these guys will get some of their comeuppance. With lower number of applications and enrollment and people who come through. Just they don't need to build the big fancy dorms. Maybe those will wind up going a little more empty, and that'll cost the schools a little. They've kind of gone over thinking like this. The spigot is just never ending, and I have a whole loan forgiveness by President Biden, by the government, is a bad policy.
Right.
It's just like you said. I mean, where's the incentive to pay it back if you think, oh, if I wait around long enough, they'll forgive it anyway. So I won't make a payment, and they'll forgive it. But for you and I too, the other thing is that, in essence, that's our money. It's all, the taxpayers. This is not a costless thing. I mean, the Democrats always want to tell you, like, how magnanimous we are of canceling all this debt. And it doesn't cost a penny. It's like, it costs plenty.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at the interest on the national debt. It's cost me plenty, and that's a whole nother thing. Is like, under the last few years, as the interest rates have risen under Biden, I mean, the interest on the national debt has skyrocketed. It's just ridiculous,
right.
And it's just digging us a deeper hole. I guess I'm glad I'm older, because I won't be, if there's some end of some point in time, I won't be here to see the ugliness of it all. But it's been pretty ugly the last 3 years in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's right.
With things. So Trump, he was ordered to pay this $355 million fine by that wonderful judge up there in New York, in that civil case. This is absolutely ludicrous. Look, I don't know how honest or dishonest Trump was in a lot of his business dealings and stuff like that. But who is exactly harmed, through a lot of stuff? The banks gave him loans. The banks knew Donald Trump. They made money off the loans they gave him.
They testified that those were good loans and they would like to do business with him again.
Yeah, Letitia
Testified
James,
during the trial.
yeah, Letitia James is going after these things, and it's like, this is just absolutely ludicrous to do this. Plus, I think he has to, in order to appeal, I think he has to basically put up the money. I guess he can get it through an insurance company or whatever insurance, but it's ridiculous. This amount of money has no bearing whatsoever on any real damages that anybody suffered, because no one could prove that any damages were suffered.
Right. That's right. Who gets that money? That's one of the questions that, like, who did they send that check to? Trump made $4.5 billion last week on the Truth Social thing. So the notion that he can't pay is ridiculous. But I think this time, of all the things that they have done to Trump, all the just manifestly unfair things they've done to Trump, this one I think actually caught people's attention. On the other side, there are a lot of people that say, I hate Trump, I wouldn't vote for him, but this is wrong, right? This is way out of line. And, this is one, if they could do this to him, they could do it to me. Then the governor comes out and says, you don't have to worry about doing business in New York. We're just doing this to Trump. Okay. That makes it way worse, right? You're saying, hey, we don't like you, then, we reserve the right to screw you individually. We're not even worry about what the law says or whether you broke the law. We're just going to find the means by which to attack you and take all your money and try to sell your businesses and not let you do business and so forth. I don't think they're going to see a penny of this. I think it's going to be appealed and he's going to win on Fifth and Eighth Amendment grounds, because it is excessive and unfair and a taking and so forth. And there's no way you can justify it otherwise.
And the judge ought to be ashamed of himself. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, and he knows it, and they know it, and they don't care, and they're preening and having fun now. But I don't think it's going to end up. The news for Trump on all these court cases against him continues to be almost uniformly good. Right? No one can bring their case to trial. There's significant legal issues hanging over all of them. And it's beginning to look like, he'll make it to election day without ever going into a courtroom, without ever going to trial for any of this stuff.
Yeah, and this is yet another case. I mean, where the Democrats have really badly miscalculated on how to damage Donald Trump. I mean, these politically motivated cases to try to hurt Trump have had exactly the opposite effect. And then this one is one of the most egregious, because you fine him this ridiculous amount of money that has no bearing on any relation to any damages anybody suffered. You put this on there, it's like, it's clearly political. It's obviously political. Right. It's like you will turn voters to Trump away from Biden and Democrats right there. Boom. You have just done. Donald Trump has, and sometimes Trump he says too much. But he has masterfully wound his way through this. He knows how to take advantage of this, and he's done very well at leveraging all this stuff that normally people would have found negative. He's turned it into a positive for him, and made himself more popular than ever in many cases.
Right. Yeah. His popularity right now is way ahead of where it ever was in 2016 or 2020. He is in better shape in the polls electorally, in the battleground states and overall than he has ever been before since he's been in politics.
So you mentioned the True Social. So it's kind of an interesting thing, because the True Social is supposed to be acquired by the SPAC, the Special Purpose Acquisition Company, the Digital World Acquisition Company, and so they're getting closer to the deadline when they must close the deal and get this done. But so the stock for the SPAC has been going, had been up and down, for a long time. But with all this stuff on Trump, the stock itself has been soaring. Now, True Social itself is actually getting low on cash, But if the agreement, if they actually bring this to fruition and they acquire it, then a lot of things change in terms of how things go forward. But it's just kind of fast. There are a lot of people out there that are betting on a Trump victory by looking at what this small part of it too is that the stock is a small stock, so it will be highly volatile. But it was going nowhere. It was even going in reverse, and now it's like soared. It's been like, okay, it's like this is kind of another market meter on Donald Trump and his chances in November, and a lot of people are saying we think he's going to win.
So that you make a good point there. The betting markets are up into the 90s now. Of him winning.
I think even Nathan Silver is basically trying to warn the Democrats. It's not good,
Yeah. Yeah, I also think a lot of you see on the internet a lot of people like, well, you don't think they're going to cheat him again, like they cheated him before? If you think he cheated him then, why don't you think they'll cheat him now? And it's like, I think it's too big to cheat. I think that if you watch, there's little signs already starting to come out. The Democrats know they're going to lose, and they're trying to prepare for it. They're trying to block Trump from being able to do stuff once he becomes president by placing guardrails on it now. They're trying to talk to world leaders about, don't worry about what he says. We'll be back in power soon enough and fix everything, and all this kind of stuff. And you already can see the signs of them just saying, the whole way the media is covering is like it's relentlessly anti-Trump, but it's more like, preparing for the worst because they know it's coming. So, I think that they've decided that Trump is ahead by a margin that will not be undone, and that they need to start, you can already start to see that they're starting to figure out how they're going to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way Trump winds up losing the election, at this point is so that he would have to basically implode himself. He would have to do the damage himself to do this.
Right. Because the charges, even if they manage to get like a conviction in one of these things, which really seems unlikely at this point, there's the 1512 case, I think, is in court this week, or we could hear about it this week, which could destroy just about all of the DC indictment and most of the Georgia indictment, and and have some impact on the Florida indictment, right? He's going to, pretty soon from now, there's not going to be a left there to charge him with, right? To put him in jail for. So, I don't think that Fani Willis is going to get her case to trial. I think they got some pretty serious problems down there. She appears to have been caught lying to the court. And so, I think that it's pretty unstoppable. And even if they do manage to pull one off, I think it will only help him, because you already hear these people, let my son Trump go, these moms, especially black moms. They're like, yeah, this looks like what happens to our kids. They have something against them, so they make up crap to do to them. Right. And so, it looks, Black America has seen this movie before. Right. And he looks like one of us, and he's up to about 19 or 20% black support now, right? It was 8 in 2020. It was 4 in 2016. So, he won with 4. He narrowly lost, supposedly, with 8. He's not losing with 20. They're all in the key places.
Yeah. So we'll see where we go with that. So I did want to just bring up briefly, at least, Joe's brother, Jim. I mean, Politico ran a story about Jim and some questionable business dealings in the healthcare industry, and the company.
One of those is that loan repayment of $200,000, right? Came on the same day that the healthcare people gave Jim $200,000.
Yeah, and there's a Medicare fraud issue that's involved in there too, and everything, and it's just like, I don't know. I thought about this. I think about him and Hunter and all these things, and I thought, if you're going to run for public office, make sure you and or your family members are clean. All right, because you can't hide this stuff forever, and it's going to come back to bite you. And here because we don't have pandemic era restrictions on Joe Biden, we can actually try to figure this out, and we can actually try to ask questions and figure. I mean, I think this is another problem that Biden is facing. And not just his own, inability to communicate very well anymore. And the fact that he's turned over government to the left wingers, but it's stuff like this in his own family, the corruption, the shady business dealings is like, how can we elect a guy like this? I mean, just try to be objective. It's like this bothers me, just objectively, looking down the middle.
Yeah, and it's like, so people need to think about this. Like, so he represented Delaware in the Senate for 40 years, right? Delaware is small. The capital city of Delaware is the smallest capital city in America. It's about 25,000 people, 26,000 people. Dover. This is a state that no one pays any attention to. The rules are set up to, I won't tell, you won't tell, the corporate rules and so forth. And no one was watching what Joe was doing. So he has set up this family business where he's been routing money to these people for years, and they have to route some back to him for it, right? But everybody ends up rich who's in the Biden family. And now you're at a level where people actually look to see where your money comes from, and they're getting caught, right? They're, don't listen to this talk about the spy. They still got $20 million in payments from China to Joe and his family. What did they get paid for, right? What did the Chinese buy from Joe and his family? There's no getting out of that question. That question has not been harmed in the least by this, ridiculous arrest of this so-called lying informant or whatever. So, they're still in a lot of trouble, and then it's about to get worse.
All right, let's wrap it up here. What else?
See if there's anything on your list that we didn't get to. Inflation is sticking back up. The Suazo guy on Long Island, the lady he ran against was a registered Democrat. She rejected the embrace. She was not MAGA. MAGA did not lose that race. No doubt why Biden didn't want the cognitive test or why they won't.
Look at last week's list.
Huh?
Oh, last week's list.
Last week, okay. There's no. Well, you blew me out of the water there.
So
the one thing also that did come up is the TJ case. The Supreme Court.
Oh yeah.
Rejected certiorari on the TJ case. A lot of people are on our side are going to be mad. The truth of the matter is, the school systems who operate this school, who pay its bills, and it's not just Fairfax, it's also Arlington, Loudoun, Prince William, City of Alexandria, City of Fairfax, who send kids to that school, right? It's not just Fairfax County. They decided that they wanted a certain thing out of the school. They changed the admission mix to get more of that kind of thing. That I think there's some deference to the voters is due here. Deference to the people the taxpayers chose to lead this is due here. And I think the court is right to let the jurisdiction decide. You won't hear a whole lot of conservatives say that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm glad you threw that in there. It's always good to get the perspective from a conservative in Virginia for this versus I was trying to sort that out.
You used to work there. Yeah, I used to coach there.
All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today. We hope you please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will be back next week as we wrap up the month. And we'll be we're in leap year, so we won't be quite at the very end of the month, but almost. But have a great week, everyone, and we will see you again next Wednesday.